So let's do a quick lightning round of just a bunch of different stuff that I've seen you talk about on your blog, other things
Sure.
that you haven't talked about, but I'm just interested in. Spend 15, 20 seconds on each one and just say, like, here's what I think is going to happen. Let's say the next 10 years. What's the 10-year forecast? So not next year, but, you have a little bit of time, but not the infinite future on
Okay.
these things. So what do you think is going to happen, for example, with housing, zoning, height restriction kind of stuff in San Francisco?
Ooh, that's a.
10-year span.
I think they're going to have to loosen up. I think they're going to have to loosen up and allow more supply to enter the market. I think it's just affordability is eroding. It's going to continue to erode, and I think they're just going to eventually hit a point where they say, you know what, we got to start allowing more supply in the city.
Top down or bottom up? I mean, who's going to initiate that, you think?
I think it's. I mean, I think it's. I guess you could say it's probably bottom up. You've got people complaining about affordability.
Yeah.
You've got community. Well, and then you've got communities that, on the one hand, I don't want to see any development.
Right, which is why it hasn't happened up until now.
So you've got that happening. It's probably a bit of both. I mean, communities getting upset, people who don't own places already upset about affordability, and then politicians worrying about the fact that affordability is an issue. We're not, we need to deal with it. So probably realistically both sides of it.
Any thoughts or speculations? Similar situation in Detroit, the 10-year forecast for Detroit. I just talked to a guy. He's like, "Yeah, we're developing like crazy, but I don't know what industry is going in to support it." What are your thoughts on Detroit?
I'm actually bullish on Detroit. I have a good friend of mine who's working there on a number of initiatives, and I actually went out there probably, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago or so, just to check it out. And I think it's just really interesting what's happening there. The kind of there's a strong passion in the city for Detroit, and there's a lot of people that want to see it come back. Obviously, Dan Gilbert's doing a ton there, and is a huge force. But I think it's got potential. I think it'll come back. In 10 years, I don't know. I don't know how far along, but I think it's going to come back. I'm bullish on it, and it's
Brandon is bullish on Detroit. What's your 10-year forecast for crowdfunding for real estate development? Somebody just emailed me today and said, "Hey, I have this real estate crowdfunding startup. Would you want to interview me on your show?" Do you think that's ever going to go anywhere, or is that just?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of it. It's, in a way, I think of it as almost the next evolution of REITs. The history of REITs and the reason why they were started was to kind of democratize the ownership of real estate.
Yeah.
And I think that crowdfunding is going to be almost like the next iteration of that, where it's way more local. You see a project going up, you can take part in it. I think we will see a lot more of it for sure.
You think it'll be all rallied around a particular real estate Kickstarter, or it's just too big of a thing for any one app to take over?
Well, right now it's happening on a per project basis.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, I mean, there's been variations of it, but it's a per project basis. And I think the other side that's interesting to that is that they're crowdsourcing community feedback as well too. Mm-hmm. So it's figuring out what the community wants and then raising the funding for that and making it happen. So, if you look at that example of that Fundrise did in DC, I think it ended up as a kind of hybrid restaurant / clothing store / I don't know, cafe or something like that. And it was taking on this new kind of use, because that's just what the community ended up kind of pushing for. So I think it's really interesting that you'll see a lot of ways in which real estate will become a little more kind of democratized in a way.
I don't know if you talked about this, but this is just an interest of mine. Wood-framed mid-rises. Because I know that this is kind of a big topic, and I saw you had gone to a prefab place, but what are your thoughts on ply scrapers?
Ply scrapers? Well, I think it's a great thing for the industry, and it's I just look at it as a way to hopefully lower the cost of construction and improve supply. On particularly let's say in this case with mid-rise buildings, there's a lot of There's a lot of challenges with mid-rise, and I don't know if you've read any of the stuff that I've written on there, but I've got something else I'll probably publish in a while. But there's a lot of challenges with mid-rise because the scale of it is smaller. We have guidelines in Toronto that force you to a 45-degree angular plane, so a transition to
those,
residential neighborhoods. So basically, every floor is different, and you're constantly offsetting, and so there's inefficiencies there with respect to construction. Again, smaller scale, so there's you don't have the same economies of scale as a tower. The sites are often, there's fragmented ownership. You're assembling a site that may have 10 different lots and 10 different owners, and so families involved. So there's a lot of challenges with mid-rise. So I think anything where we can kind of streamline and reduce the costs of delivering new supply, I think will help. So what I've been hearing lately is that because this is the first year where Ontario has started to allow 6-story wood frame, and the feedback that I've gotten is that it's still relatively new. Once the industry kind of really gets its head around it, once the trades kind of really get their heads around it, we should see costs come down a little bit, but it's going to take a bit of time for that to happen.
And final lightning round question: what is your 10-year forecast for the Gardiner Expressway teardown dream? Because I know you guys just had the referendum and it didn't work out, and they're planning a park. Do you think that will continue to stand, or do you think no, somehow in the middle of the night somebody's going to take it out?
Well, I think it's there's a bit of a split. There is a split. The Gardiner, the west side is basically all built up. There's cases where you're driving on the Gardiner and you can see someone in their kitchen and you could see what they're taking out of their fridge. I mean, you're right. You could high five them through your window. It's that close. And so I think that's why I ended up supporting the Under Gardiner project, which is a linear park underneath, because I just don't believe it's going to go. That's the west side's going to go anywhere. It's too built up. It's cost prohibitive. I think for us
too integrated.
It's too integrated at this point. So let's at least fix up the public realm around it and kind of stitch the area together. So 10-year prediction, that's not going anywhere. That's going to stay. And the park, it looks highly likely it's funded and hopefully it's enough, but it's funded and it looks like that project's going. On the east side, I am remaining optimistic that we somehow the right decision will come forward, which I believe is to remove the Gardiner East. So council didn't vote that way in the summer, but there's still a few things that need to happen. So I'm remaining optimistic that we'll make that happen. So it's there's just the east waterfront is undeveloped right now. Yeah, it's starting and there's development starting to happen. But it's just, I think once that development happens, you're going to design the building in such a way to deal with the adjacency of the Gardiner, and then it's set that way, right? So 10-year prediction on the Gardiner is optimistic. We'll figure things out.